Welcome back everyone. Today we're taking a trip down memory lane. My name is Monica and in this video I'll be looking at some fantastic decks from the 1980s, which, believe it or not, is like over 40 years ago. I have a really big soft spot for decks from the 1980s, also decks from the 1990s, and I'll be doing a follow-up video to this one looking at decks from the 90s. But today I've got 7 decks from the 1980s, and I acknowledge that there are many others out there from that decade. If you've got any you'd like to share, it would be really wonderful. Please let me know if you decide to do a video on decks from the 1980s that you have. But today I went through my collection and I've got 7, so that's what we're going to look at. And of course, as always, I start with a cup of tea. Ooh, a bit hot. We'll let that sit there for a bit. Right, let's get started. So we're starting off with the Sacred Rose. I only got this about a year ago, I believe. I had been wanting it for a long time. And actually, before I go in, let me just say that when I say decks from the 1980s, I'm talking about the very first edition, the very first time they were published. Because some of these decks were actually reprinted later on. Some have even been redone. But I'm really looking at that very first edition, which for all of these decks was sometime in the 1980s. And with the Sacred Rose, it was 1982, I believe. I had wanted this for so long, and in the end, I had to bite the bullet and pay a reasonable price for this deck, because of course this one's out of print, and I think I paid around 80 Australian dollars from memory. I can't remember correctly. So this was by Johanna Sherman, and it was published in 1982. So, and how I know that is I normally look in the little white booklet inside, and you've got copyright 1982 US Game Systems booklet printed in the USA. Really nice thick paper for the booklets, which I really appreciate because they last so much longer. So this is, it's a wonderful deck. You know, tarot is such a subjective thing when it comes to what you like and why you like it. But for me, I think that this deck just has a really beautiful artwork. And remember, we're talking about 1980s, when the digital world wasn't really around. Not even things like Photoshop. And so the artwork that you get is hand-painted. And I really value that. I think that it's absolutely stunning, and the color choices. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for a beginner's deck because some of the cards are not that easy to relate to the traditional system of Rider-Waite-Smith. Most of them are. So most of them, this is a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But I do find that the artwork sometimes can be a bit tricky in interpreting. So not overly so, but certainly some cards, a few cards have kind of thrown me off. I mean, it's great when you're a seasoned reader and it helps you to, test your intuition a bit. You're not relying on card meanings. But when you're a beginner, you really want to, like a classic standard deck like Rider-Waite-Smith, and you work from that and you learn off that. So yeah, this is the Sacred Rose Tarot deck by Johanna Sherman, and I really value this. No regrets about paying what I paid for it because the cards are in excellent condition, and I really look for that when I acquire an out-of-print deck. I really need them to be in a really good condition for readings. I do read with this deck. I think it's a fantastic reading deck. And yeah, like I said, no regrets. Really value having this in my collection. So that's the very first one, the Sacred Rose Tarot. Up next, we've got a classic. Well, I think it's a classic. It's the Connelly Tarot. I only acquired this recently, and when I say recently, I mean it's over a year ago. But this was initially published in, I think, 1989. So we're getting to the end of the 90s. It was created by Peter Paul Connelly and Aileen Connelly and published by US Game Systems. And it is a classic in terms of it's a very well-known deck by many readers who work with this deck. Personally, I just didn't come across it, so I didn't work with it. Now, it's made in Italy, which I really like that about it. And let's just have a look and see. So yeah, this one's got copyright 1990-2006, but the initial one was published in 1989. And I think that I can see why this is a classic deck. It's uncluttered. It's a little bit different to Rider-Waite-Smith in some cards. Like, for example, look at this Five of Wands here. Now, if you're an experienced reader, this looks more like the Six of Swords, doesn't it? At least to me, it really does. So some of these cards might be a bit tricky for a beginner reader, but nonetheless, this deck is a really wonderful deck to work with for, you know, your staple questions about life, work, love. It works wonderfully for that. It mostly keeps with the Rider-Waite-Smith system, and I think it's, you know, easy to work with. And I don't mean that in an insulting way, you know, being easy, but you can have a fluent conversation with this deck, which is what I look for when I choose decks for readings. The conversation flows, the meanings flow, everything comes fairly easily, and I value that absolutely. So this is the Connelly Tarot deck. It mostly shows as being printed in 1990, but so far from what I've seen, the first edition was printed in 1989. So I'm just trying to think where I got that from. Oh yeah, from the box. So the box that I have, let's see if we can just zoom into that. You see it's got copyright 1989 and 2006 US Game Systems. So anyway, fantastic little deck here, and I do recommend this as a reading deck, absolutely. The Barbara Walker Tarot is, in my opinion, a deck like no other. You know, for all the thousands of decks out there, I still consider this deck to hold its own unique space. Yeah, and I haven't found any decks that kind of even come close in having a similar kind of energy, and it's a bit tricky to describe this deck. This was published in 1986. Again, the deck that I have is like the booklet. The paper is just so thick, and it was printed in the USA back in the good old days when you had stuff that was printed properly. I bought this a long time ago. When I first arrived in Melbourne in Australia, I bought this from the Theosophical bookshop, which at the time was a great bookshop. From what I understand, it is no longer so. For $29.95. This deck is now long out of print, and I'm not sure how much it commands in terms of cost. Now, my experience working with this deck, I don't really do readings for others with this deck. It's a really gutsy kind of a deck. It's a no bullshit kind of deck. It's a bit scary. It does at times. It feels intimidating to me. All right, the Barbara Walker Tarot. That said, I love it. I think I can't describe it, guys and girls. I have read though that there is some contentious issue around the information contained in the little white booklet. that it is not historically accurate. And I'm not exactly sure which parts of it. I haven't looked into that because I work off the imagery. And in terms of doing that, this deck is fantastic. Like it... Yeah, don't work with this deck when you're in a really sensitive, fragile space. That's all I can say. Work with it when you've got the guts to face the issue, right? It's yeah, like it's great. I'm not dissing it as a deck. Obviously, I wouldn't be showing it because any decks that I really don't work for me, I kind of pass on, move on. They don't stay in my collection. So I'm not dissing it as a deck. I just think it's not for the faint-hearted sometimes with some of the imagery and some of the keywords. Yeah, I think it's a Thoth-based deck. And nonetheless, it's a fantastic reading deck. But for me, it's more like a strictly for my own reading deck. Like I just don't have the guts to use this with other people. Not because I don't think it's gonna give wrong readings. I think that I need to be in a space where I can guide others through some of this imagery and the keywords. And I do think that other people really struggle seeing some of the images or some of the keywords here. So that's kind of like where I'm coming from when I say I'm not gonna work with it from readings for others. So this is the Barbara Walker Tarot. I do recommend it, but yeah, not for beginners or anything like that. A lovely little deck from the 80s is the Hanson-Roberts Tarot, illustrated by Mary Hanson-Roberts. She also, I believe, did the illustrations for the Universal Rider-Waite-Smith, which is my favorite version of the Rider-Waite-Smith because it makes it quite soft and beautiful. Now, this was published in 1985, I believe. It's not on here. From memory, I think you can still get this. It's a mass market deck. Let's have a look. Printed in Italy, which I love. Don't know why I love that. I mean, anything to do with Italy, how can you not love? So, US Game Systems. Yeah, copyright 1985, 2004. Okay, and I think you should still have this. This is an excellent reading deck for beginners. I really value this. And also, if you've got small hands, as you can see, the cards are small, so really, really beautiful to shuffle for those of us with smaller hands. And yeah, it's just a really nice deck to read with. It's got beautiful illustrations. They kind of remind me a little bit like kids' storybooks illustrations, it's like my favorite type of art to view and to enjoy. And it's a fantastic reading deck for beginners and more experienced readers alike. So if you're looking for an alternative to Rider-Waite-Smith, I would highly recommend this deck. Of course, like all these decks from the 1980s and even 1990s, and to some extent the 2000s as well, the cardstock, like I really love the cardstock of these decks. It's unpretentious, but it works so well. And it actually trumps a lot of modern cardstocks that use gilding ineffectively. They don't do a proper print job with the gilding and all those sort of things. So anyway, I reckon personally I love this cardstock because it's effortless. It works really well. It stands the test of time, and I kind of wish that the creators would go back to it personally, at least for mass market decks. So as you can see, this is a lovely, lovely deck to work with, and I can't commend it enough. Of course, this video would not be complete without the Mythic Tarot deck. What a classic. What an excellent deck. I mean, the value of this deck, I think it kind of speaks for itself. It's in command, it's in demand. It's a common deck used by readers. And it also has an excellent associated book that comes with it that talks you through the cards and the meaning behind and the story, because of course it's based on Greek mythology. And it was published, I believe, around 1989, so just squeezing in the 1980s. Now, this version, so the very first published version, is out of print. And yeah, so here we've got the card illustration is actually copyright 1986, but the deck copyright is 1989, and then reprinted in 1990. There is the new Mythic deck, which is the modern version of it. It's exactly the same, but it's kind of been stylized differently. I like both of them. I know a lot of people don't, but I do like both of them. And I kind of don't think that I need to describe this deck very much, because everyone knows it, don't they? Everyone knows how fantastic this is as a reading deck. And if you're like me, Greek mythology is like kind of like part of my ancestry, really. I mean, it is. I was actually even baptized, I believe, as Greek Orthodox. Not that I practice that in any sense, but I loved reading Greek myths as a child. Some of them have fantastic lessons for us. Who really knows where they came from? I mean, they seem just so wild. All the gods and all the stories surrounding them. But I think that Julia Sharman-Berg and Liz Green did a fantastic job with this deck. And it's proof they did that because it stood the test of time, and it's still an excellent reading deck. Again, not one that I'd recommend for beginners, because you have that layering of the Greek myths, and a lot of cards show scenes from that deviate from the Rider-Waite Smith, but this is a fantastic reading deck. I mean, it's just, I've lost track the number of times I've read with this for myself, for clients. It works a treat, and I think it will continue to be a classic long into the future. One deck that I don't think gets enough credit out there in the tarot world from the 1980s is the Tarot of the Cat People. I just think this is absolutely fabulous, like completely and utterly a delight of a deck. And I think it might be out of print now, but I've seen it come up for reasonable prices on my local Facebook group, buy, swap, sell tarot deck group. And if you see it, and if you like what you see here, grab it if it comes up for sale, because I know it is out of print. So it comes in this. I hate these boxes, by the way. I hate the bits of styrofoam in there, and they just really irritate me. But I quite like that it's got this fold out. Can't show it in here, but anyway, it's like one of those large fold out spreads. My plan is to frame that at some stage. Comes with a great booklet, in-depth explanations and meanings of all the cards. I think it's done really, really well. It's got copyright 1991. However, the deck was initially published in 1984. Here we go. It's right on the box, as you can see. So it is a deck from the 1980s. And in fact, I would dare say that some of the artwork, in terms of the dress of the people, kind of reminds me of some elements of the 1970s. That's just my personal, opinion on that. It's a very unusual deck. But I think the artwork just makes it so worthwhile and one of the most enjoyable to work with. I can sit and stare at their costumes and what they're wearing for hours. I think it's fantastic. You have cats appearing in most images, and also the people, the faces of the people are kind of a bit cat-like. So it kind of feels like it's like a a fictional fantasy culture that worships cats. Fantastic. As only cats can be worshipped. So, I don't read with this very often. I don't think it makes like a fluid reading deck. I mean, it's not to say that you can't read with it, because you absolutely can. But I feel like it doesn't have enough action in the cards, and some of the cards, to the extent that I like them to have it, if that makes sense. And for that reason, I kind of reserve this deck when I just want to use a deck and work with a deck where I'm really loving the artwork. You know, it's a visual experience that is very, very enjoyable and beautiful and uplifting, and I kind of feel like I'm transported back to the 70s and 80s when I work with this deck. What a fantastic time that was. And even the 80s, I mean, different world, right? And so, yeah, it's a really beautiful deck in my opinion. Absolutely stunning. I can't commend it enough for its artwork. And yes, you can read with it, but to me, I'm just saying that it just kind of, I would like a few more action scenes in some of the cards, whereas it seems to be focused more on showcasing the people in it. So yeah, I'm almost interested in getting a backup copy, and I would have, but I missed out a couple of times, and I kicked myself for missing out. But you know, I mean, I've got one copy, so I just have to look after it really well and try and preserve it into the future, because as far as I know, this hasn't been reprinted anytime lately. And although, you know, part of me kind of thinks that US Games will look to reprint some of these decks in the future, like they've already done with, say, Tarot of a Moon Garden and the Crystal Tarot. I wouldn't be surprised if this comes back into print, and I kind of hope it does. But I really, really hope they don't change the cardstock. I'm a fan of this really simple but effective cardstock, personally. Okay, last but not least is the Cosmic Tarot. Now there seems to be some, I wouldn't say confusion. I think it's just, the confusion was probably mainly on my part, on when this was published for the first time. And I've come across 1988, but I've also seen online someone selling it and saying it was a 1986 version. So, you know, in any case, it's the 1980s. This is another one I purchased from the Theosophical Bookshop way back in the day for $35. You know, I mean, at the time, $35, it wasn't super expensive, but also, you know, it wasn't like cheap either. I wasn't earning at the time and had very limited means. So actually, no, I went back in 2013 and I think back in 2014. So I might have bought it then, and then I did have money, which was fantastic to walk into a bookshop that had all of these decks and just choose what I wanted. So now the booklet states in here it was printed in 1998, but you'll see the introduction by the artist Norbert Losch. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. It's from 1988, and the deck was published in 1988 as far as the information that I've come across. This is a Thoth-based deck. It's a fantastic Thoth-based deck, and it's kind of unique and quirky because some of the port cards, but not all, are based on some movie characters from the time, as you will see. I can never remember who's who, but once you see them, you kind of go, oh, that kind of looks like someone I know from the movies. So yeah, it's Thoth based. Some of the difficult cards are like really challenging to see, by the way. Just a warning there. Nonetheless, I find the artwork just really well done, really beautiful. Kind of has that kind of fantasy feel about it that I love. It's got a bit of a romantic feel to it too, and I love that too. And I don't know, because it's a Thoth deck and because I am still learning the Thoth, I might do a video on that. It's a long and painful exercise for me. It's dragging on, but I just don't think it's the deck for me to read with, the Thoth. But then decks like these, I do enjoy working with. And I think the artwork has a lot to answer for in terms of the fact that even though I'm not a Thoth person per se, now and then I really, really enjoy getting this deck out and working with it. I'm not sure what else there is to say about this deck. It's a very, very kind of unique deck. Because, for example, this is like a modern scene, but then you look at some cards like this one and you think you're like in some sort of fantasy land, or, you know, the Eastern Asia somewhere, maybe India, like kind of lush, and I don't know. They're just the kind of feelings I get from it, like this one from the Middle East or North Africa. So it's got like a unique blend of mystical and modern infused throughout it. Love the High Priestess here, as I love the Moon, as I love the whole deck. I think it's such a wonderful deck. Even for those like me who are not really into Thoth, yeah, it draws us in. It's got its own mystical allure. So I'll just say that. So yeah, this concludes my journey through the 1980s decks that I have. And I just want to say that personally, I think that all of these decks that I've showcased here are fantastic. I think, I mean, part of it is a trip down nostalgia memory lane. The 1980s, it's such a long time ago, but if you're my age, you will have a special kind of fondness for the 1980s, or elements of the 1980s, not all of it. And not least because the cardstock, like I said, is really, really fantastic. So I just love working with these decks. They shuffle so well and they cut really well, and I don't know, they're just really, really beautiful to work with. So I shall conclude that here. That's my notebook with my notes in it. And I will do a second part where I'll look at decks from the 90s sometime over the next couple of weeks. And I might even do one from decks from the 2000s. I'll see what I can pull out that kind of has my interest. And hey, if you've got decks from the 1980s especially that I haven't featured and you want to do a video, by all means, please let me know, tag me in or something, because I'd love to know like what's out there, you know, just so I can kind of see if there's something I want to add to my collection and work with. I think they're all really great working decks. Anyhow, thanks so much for watching. Until my next video, take care.